Fuzzy dice, check. Whack-a-con bobblehead doll, check. Diesel incense, check. Cool.
What's going on, everyone? We're getting started in just a second. How is it going? What's going on, Fix It Geek? What's up, Blackwing? How you guys doing? And we will get going. What is going on? Welcome everyone to another fantastic Tuesday here on the Exploding Dice channel. Sorry, so I was hearing the noise in my ear. What's going on? Welcome to your DM show, Fuzzy Dice, here on the Exploding Dice channel. I got a great show for you lined up. I'm hanging out. My cameras are on which side? Nope, this side. I always mix it up. I'm hanging out with my friend Reed from Sneak Podcast. How's it going, man?
Hey, how you doing?
I am doing great, and I am looking forward to hanging out while I fix my camera. And we got a great show for you. We're going to get into some awesome discussion, some real cool topics, and all that. But before we do, why don't we blast through a couple announcements? All right, you no more Optimus Rhyme. We're done with you. Back onto fantasy music. For those of you, people have asked me before, by the way. People keep asking me who does the intro song. The intro song is called Fuzzy Dice by Optimus Rhyme. They're an awesome band. If you haven't heard about them, go check them out. They are legit. All right, so announcements to get out of the way. Let me open up my notepad here. First of all, we are still well on our way to on our road to 1K. You can see it. It's on the screen opposite me, way over at that end. We are working steadily towards our big 1K goal. I think just over 50 followers away, which sounds like a lot, but it's really not. So if you want to, if you're enjoying the show, please hit that follow button. Convince all your friends to, and when you do, when we hit that magic number, there is an awesome 24-hour stream as a reward for you guys. And when I say awesome, I mean, trust me, I'm working on in the background to sort out all the details, and you are going to like what I have to announce. And right away, thank you, Greg Stronghammer, for following. Welcome to the madness, my friend. Thank you for joining us.
Classic Greg.
Yes, and he also said you're looking gorgeous today.
Yeah, that may or may not be one of my players.
I figured, but I also figured it might just be like a stalker, or
I think both. Yeah, both.
Okay. Well, that is one announcement out of the way. The other one is obviously this is a huge announcement. You're going to hear more about this week on the Jade Regent show, but and when I say we, I mean the Exploding Dice cast and crew, we are going to be featured on the front page of Twitch. We're going to be live playing D&D in front of the entire world. Every single person is going to be there. No, it's huge news. I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be a great episode. I've already got a guest planned for it. We've got awesome story stuff to get through. That is going to happen the Sunday, the week of December 12th. So I don't know what day that is. I don't know what the actual number date that is, but that's the week that it's happening. And thank you, Heels Angels, for joining us. Welcome to the madness, my friend. Thank you so much for helping us on our fantastic road. Normally, for those of you who may be new here, if we were playing D&D, I would be doing shots right now because we have drinking rules in play, but not during the talk show. I cannot get drunk on my own talk show. That's
don't let me stop you.
No, I gotta be up at work early tomorrow. I can't afford it, but I promise you, my throat may be dry, but my spirit will be drunk.
Perfect.
All right, do I have any other announcements? There is going to be no Iron Gods, and I think there might be Storm King's Thunder tomorrow. There will be no Iron Gods this week because Iron Gods happens on Thursday, and Thursday is Thanksgiving. So that's not, yeah. But we will be back next week with all of that stuff. I think that's all my announcements. If I remember anything else, I will get to them at the end of the show. So we will get into our content here. Like I said, we are joined by the Dungeon Master from Sneak Attack Podcast. Why don't you, Reed? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you kind of what you get up to? What's your thing?
My thing?
Yeah.
What do you want to know? Do you want to know about like my gaming history or like what specifically about the podcast?
I mean, I want to know the whole story. Start at the beginning, and we'll just go through all of it.
Okay. Well, I told this story. It's one of my favorite stories to tell. We had a mailbag episode on our show a little while ago, and someone asked how he got started or something like that, and how I personally got started, like in nerd culture and nerdiness in general, was I was almost 2 years old. So this is way back in the Christmas of 1989, and my family got a Nintendo Entertainment System for Christmas. It was a family gift, but what that really meant is it was mine, but I had to let my sisters play with it sometimes, and I was just ecstatic. I'm not even 2 years old, so I probably didn't even know what it did. But there's home video of me getting it set up with my dad, and that's the bundle, by the way, that came with like Super Mario Brothers, Duck Hunt, and the Duck Hunt.
No, I had it.
It was a staple of childhood, and so we had that, and there's video of me sitting in my dad's lap, like pointing the light gun at the screen and like shooting it, and just being amazed that I was shooting these virtual ducks, and you could see it in my face, like something just clicked, and like I was just awestruck by what was going on, and I think that is the moment, and it's captured on film, that like kind of set my path, my destiny, so to speak. And there was no coming out of the nerdiness after that. I just kind of dove in head first. I've been playing video games ever since. RPGs for, gosh, I mean, at least 15 years. Tabletop RPGs, specifically D&D and like Pathfinder and stuff, for only about the last 5. That's been a pretty recent addition into my nerdy repertoire. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's my nerd culture nerdiness in a nutshell.
And yeah, I mean, I think we're like, for me, it wasn't Nintendo, but I had a pretty similar experience the day my dad handed me the floppy disks for Ultima.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. How many floppies were in that installation?
Which one?
Ultima 1.
Oh god, I don't even know if I had Ultima 1. At least 5, I think.
That was the most terrifying thing, installing games with like multiple discs. You're just like, something's gonna screw up. I know, like I'm gonna get to 5 out of 7, and something's gonna break, and I have to do all this over again.
But I don't even like they were already installed. But I just remember, I remember my dad showed me how to play Ultima 2, and I was just, it was one of those things where you move around with the arrow keys, and you just shoot monsters that come up. And like I was fighting monsters, and then I learned how to steal from like the towns, and I don't even like at some point my character got like a blaster gun, and I'm like, this is the best thing ever. And then I don't even remember how it happened. I just remember I was playing the Ultima 2, and it's like you get a spacesuit and a spaceship, and then you're in space, and I'm like, this is. My mind is all over the wall right now. Yeah. Like, I'm 9 years old, and I cannot even comprehend.
Didn't know it was possible.
It was all over for me.
Your little world.
I was done. It was all over for me. So tell us a little bit about the podcast. I mean, it looks like we've got tons of people in chat that have, and not just chat, but have great things to say about the show. So tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so the podcast we started in about June of 2015, June or July. The release date's a little up in the air because we posted a couple episodes to get them under our belt, and then officially announced it like a few weeks later. Mm-hmm. So we've been doing this for about a year and a half. I am the Dungeon Master, as it says on my little title card there, and 4 of my friends are the players of the game. We're playing 5th edition. I've played 4th edition and Pathfinder 3.5 or whatever that ends up being, as well as 5th edition, and we really gravitated towards 5th edition from a rule set and just a simplicity type of standard. So we figured when doing the auditory medium, not being able to see or like see our character sheets or anything like that, just for math's sake and for explanation's sake, we're just going to keep it simple. And yeah, really, we just decided. I had actually had a very unsuccessful podcast before that. Me and a couple buddies just decided, hey, we're nerds. We like nerdy things and comic books and movies, so we're gonna have one of those podcasts, like the other 10 million types that exist out there. And unsurprisingly, we did not do anything to differentiate ourselves from the other 10 million, and so we petered out pretty quick. But what that did was it put this little nugget in my brain that said, you really enjoyed the actual process of podcasting, the coming up with content and then sitting down, the actual recording, just the back and forth you get from interacting with people. I loved it. So I still had this idea rolling around, like, what is something we could do that could reach people, or at least allow us to be consistent without necessarily maybe shooting for such a wide, already oversaturated target. And so when I was playing 4th edition at the time, D&D 4th edition, and everything was going pretty great, but that group kind of fell apart a little bit, as every group does at some point. Things come up and you just have to take a break. And so I got my buddy Josh, who was Greg Stronghammer in chat. Thanks, Josh. I got him to kind of into the game, and once he was in, he was like super on board, and he just wanted to spend all of his time doing it. And then a few buddies I went to high school with, we were all playing and said, let's do this as a show. Let's do this as a podcast, because I really feel like we could do it well in a medium, and especially in a format that is very underrepresented with D&D. And so, I mean, there's a lot of really, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of really awesome actual play podcasts out there, storied ones that have been around for 4 or 5 plus years, and they're great. But we kind of wanted to focus on a little bit different style of actual play, something really focused in the actual gameplay and the table feel is what I like to call it. Just actually having people think like they're just sitting there with us enjoying this game. And so that's what we really tried to target and focus on. And so yeah, we launched a year and a half ago. We have about 80 episodes under our belt, because we've been fortunate enough to launch, or to release weekly every single Friday for the last almost 18 months. We haven't missed a Friday. And yeah, so the podcast has grown, and we have these really incredible fans that very early on were like latched on to what we were doing, and they were able to kind of like pick up our vibe and what we were shooting for, and thankfully, and yeah, they've been on this ride with us ever since. It's been really, really great. I'm super fortunate that we were able to find an audience really, really strongly out of the gate.
Yeah, and I have a question I want to follow up with, but before I say that, I guess we have some people in chat who may be new to the show, and I just wanted to reiterate this. I sometimes forget to say this at the beginning of the show. For those of you who are new to Fuzzy Dice, we're going to be hanging out, and we're going to be talking DM stuff and just chatting, and whatever interests us for a little while. And then obviously a big part of the show, as Dice Thulu will happily remind you, is our live Q&A section. So we're gonna be taking questions a little later on in the show. So if you have any questions, any topics you want us to discuss, keep those in mind, save them, and we will, later on at the top of the hour, you can just shoot them to us, and we will be happy to take them. Thank you so much, Bear the Bear-tastic, for following. Welcome to the madness, my friend. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for the support.
Bear the Bear-tastic. That's one of our Twitter followers. What's up, Bear? Good to see you. I'm glad you're able to make it to the show.
Yes, and thank you for joining us too. So you said I guess that was really interesting. So you when you're talking about kind of differentiating yourself as a podcast, especially a D&D group, I've had the privilege of interacting with a lot of different D&D groups over the years that some of them manage to sort of differentiate themselves very strongly in their own certain way. and you said you kind of had something in mind. Like, do you guys at the table, and do you as a DM, do you take any specific steps to like make sure you keep that consistent, or is it just sort of a product of when you guys play together?
I think it's a little of both. The fact that myself and the four players, we go back several years.
Mm-hmm.
We've all been good friends for a long time. So I think our natural chemistry together really lends itself to part of that table feel, which I was talking about.
Yeah.
Letting people know, like, we're just a group of guys hanging out, having fun, or guys and gals. We have a female that plays with us as well, Josh's wife, actually. And so we're just a group of people hanging out and having a good time. And what I told Josh and the other guys when we started was, let's just see if anyone cares about us playing. We can, if nothing else, I just want to play D&D with you guys. So I think just having that mentality of like, we're playing for ourselves. I'm most interested when I'm planning everything is like, would I have fun playing this game? Will my players have fun playing this game? And then even beyond that, is what I'm doing going to be easily represented and absorbed from the community just through the podcast? Will they be able to pick up and actually feel engaged with what we're doing as well? And so I think just the fact that we have that natural chemistry, and that's kind of like been my mindset in the planning process, I think that helps. But during the actual recording sessions, we're all very aware of what we're doing. It's like there's totally times where we get on a tangent and just laugh at our own stupid inside jokes for a few minutes, and we go, oh, okay, that was a good time, but let's like actually keep playing.
Okay.
And so Josh does a really good job of trimming that out. I mean, if it's funny and it's actually relevant, he leaves it in there because I think that enhances the aspect of they're just people sitting at our table watching us play. But if it just gets off the rails, which it has gotten off the rails, then Josh is very wise to cut that stuff out. So, and I think honestly, just like I said, the consistency, the fact that we were able to have that every Friday release schedule for the last 17 months has been a huge part as well. Just knowing right away, we said to our fans, hey, this is what we're doing. We're not going to deviate from it. So if you like what we're doing, you can expect something every week from us. I think that's just gone that's been a huge part in making sure that we're able to provide something I feel like that other people, other shows don't necessarily, or they're not able to provide in that way. And I think one other small thing, because there are a few shows that do this as well, but we add what I call like ambient sound effects. So there are some really great podcasts out there that do like fully produced big orchestral scores, sweeping transitions. That's awesome, but it's also incredibly lengthy to edit. And so in order to keep up with that weekly schedule, but still add a little bit of that flair, we add just these ambient sound effects of like weapon hits and like environmental noises and stuff like that. Just really subtle, like when you're listening to it, and especially when we were testing it out and I was listening to the first few edits, I'm just like, this is really great, because as it happens, you don't even think to yourself, oh, they added a sound effect. You just hear it and it feels right. It feels natural.
Well, that's like a lot of times, when you're talking about anything, like any kind of production, whether it be like a movie or a play or any kind of like the best sort of music and the best sort of noise is the stuff that is so sort of seamless with the scene that's going on that like
totally
it does, you don't realize it because it feels like part of the scene. Like if for example a music's, and I wish I was like there was a way that you could sort of like, you can do it with editing, but when we're live, like I wish there was a way to like sort of make music like swell and have crescendos and stuff, or dramatic notes where you really need them. But sometimes you get lucky with those moments. Like sometimes you just happen to be like on a moment where there's just a big wah, like you're everyone's silent, or you just dropped a clue. But yeah, it's really interesting. Do you now? This is actually a question for me. Do you have any particular favorites, like go-tos when it comes to sound and stuff? Because everyone who knows us knows that our show is a big part of our show is our friends over at Sirenscape. They're awesome, and they provide some really, really great sounds and music that I love using when I can.
Yeah. For us, we were actually contacted probably like 6 or 7 months ago by this company called Battle Bards. They're I'm sure you're familiar with
Yeah.
them. They're pretty big in this scene, and they reached out to us and said, "Hey, we heard what you're doing. We like what you're doing. Would you want to partner with us? We can provide you these materials, and you just promote us." And we said, "Hey, that's great. We really like what you guys are doing." So they gave us a little sample platter of a bunch of different things, and that's helped a lot because their stuff is super high produced, super high quality,
Yeah.
really impressive materials there. And then just recently, we purchased this software called Filmstro. I
Okay.
don't know. It's still kind of like more used for videography or video editing
Mm-hmm.
type of practices, and but which actually Josh and myself are kind of longtime video editors or videographers. So this has been a really awesome tool for us to use for the podcast, and so what this does, it kind of allows you to custom tailor different soundscapes exactly to what you need. So it's got like these three little bars that you can to control the intensity of, and these three bars will control like how emotional the song feels, or how powerful it feels, or just a very somber. And it's all like keyframeable, so you can keyframe it to the time of your audio file, and swells when you need to, then bring it down when you need to, all while keeping the same melodic tone. So it's just really, I encourage everyone, like if you're interested at all in like musical production or adding that kind of stuff to your piece or video or podcast or whatever you're working on, like I encourage everyone to look at it, because we paid for it. Where
Yeah.
I'm not like a shill for an advertiser right now. Like we paid for it, we bought it, it's legit. But we've had such good success with it that I can't really praise it enough.
Yeah, I think I own a bunch of Battle Bard sets. Like I've purchased them. My only issue is that I think their web interface is a little bit too complicated for me to use on the fly during a stream.
Sure.
It's kind of I'm not that smart. Which is why I was already using Sirenscape, and then I just happened to hang out with Ben, the creator, and we hit it off and became friends. And he's been such a supporter of the channel, and he actually stopped, he stops by our shows every week, and he's like, yeah, you're just mention us, and you can have all, like, we'll pick up the tab for that. And then so I still have the same subscription. It's just it's a lot easier for me to use on the fly. But I like it's really interesting, the thing like where you can kind of control the tone and stuff that you're going for, because if I could find something like that I could use on the fly, I would be all over that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, again, Josh uses this more than I do, but I'm pretty sure it just runs forever until you fade it out, and then you can adjust the tones on the fly. So it's really cool stuff. I'd encourage you to take a look at it. I think it's got a lot of really awesome, almost I call them impractical uses, where this was really designed for like video editing, but we found use for it with a purely audio format. So I think there's function there for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So now the things that I kind of I know, I guess I know a little bit about this, but obviously I want to delve into it. When you are running your games as a DM, like, where do you kind of consider yourself on sort of and I call it like the 7-dimensional spectrum that makes up how people what kind of a DM you are? Are there any things that you consider yourself either sort of proficient in, or more interested in doing with your games?
Sure. World building is my passion.
Mm-hmm.
I love coming up with worlds, cities, towns, histories, anything that involves making an environment or a city or the world you're playing in feel more rich and like full of lore to explore, full of things to do. That's what gets me going. At the same time, I'm so unbelievably bad at NPCs, and that's got to be high up there on the list of like things DMs are good at, and I'm not.
Are you talking about coming up with them, or like acting them out?
Oh, if I can get an NPC come up with, then I feel like I can act it out just fine, and I'll do a terrible impression or a terrible accent to totally sell it if I can. But I feel like my NPCs are always the least interesting part about my world, which I'm always trying to come up with like super interesting or super clever ones, but I don't know. I judge myself pretty harshly when it comes to that. But the world building side is far and away my favorite thing. And things I hold on, I like in terms of things that I like for my players that I'm really strongly for is making sure that they never feel like their decisions had no impact in the world, or conversely that a decision that was made was going to be made without their involvement. So I guess railroading is kind of like my biggest like red flag. I will never ever try or make you feel like you've been railroaded in as a player in my game, because that's like when I was a player, when I first started out in 4th edition, and to feel like, oh, like nothing I did or could have done would have changed the outcome, that to me is just a terrible feeling. Like I'll just watch a movie or play a video game then, or even like a more linear game, because that's all this is. D&D is a really special, really unique form of interactive communication that actually allows you to fully shape this narrative along with the dungeon master, and literally no other medium offers that. And so to rob my players of that joy, of that ability to make them feel like what they're doing matters, I feel like that's super detrimental in a campaign. So that's always like front of my mind whenever we're playing, is like I never want them to feel like they're just being on a guided tour and okay, like now you guys should go in here and then talk to this person and then they'll give you this item and all right, you solved the puzzle, congrats guys.
And by the way, I totally missed this before. Thank you so much, Gantwick, for following. Welcome to the madness, my friend. Thank you for joining us. Yes, Gantwick.
Good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, that's I always tell people I am probably a little bit like I'm very strange as a dungeon master in the sense that I think world building is probably the thing I'm least passionate about. In the sense that it never really came naturally to me. I'm an illustrator by trade, but I'm horrible with a blank piece of paper. Like, I work best with a design brief in front of me. Where it's like start with this and then make iterations on that until you find something really, really cool and unique. But if you just hand me a blank piece of paper, I could just kind of stare at it for hours and not come up with anything. Right. So world building has always been kind of my weakest point, which is why very, very rarely do I ever just sort of homebrew a whole campaign from scratch, because I don't think I have enough faith in myself to create a really, really interesting story from nothing. Though once I kind of get going, especially under pressure, I tend to do my best work. By far, I think my strongest thing is always NPCs. Like, I love acting them out. I love engaging as them. I love voice acting. Like, I'm horrible at it, but it's one of the most fun things for me to do.
Yeah. See, I think the two of us then, like, we've got a full DM complement.
That's what I said. Yeah, no.
I'll build the world, you populate them with awesome characters, and then we'll make the best campaign ever.
Fix-It Geek says, so I take it you didn't write your 4,000 words. Is that for the November writing thing? My what is it, NaNoWriMo? I managed to get a world record 9 words done, and I felt pretty good about that. And yeah, that's an accomplishment for me. No, I don't write. I'm not a writer in any sense of the word. I'm an illustrator. I think visually. Like, when I'm building my world and stuff, I tend to think more through maps and images and things like that, and visual descriptions than I do of like. Even when I'm writing plots, like, it's always a very, very visual kind of like a spider web of this connects to this connects to this, which loops around back to here. Like, yeah, it's just I'm horrible with it.
Your writing space looks like an old 1940s detective movie where
exactly
everywhere, and
I could show you.
There's a saxophone playing in the background for some reason.
I could show you my plot web, and it's just a bunch of names, and like this this connects over here, and then this clue that gives a clue that leads back to here, because I actually Oh yeah, no, Fix-A-Geek reminds. He says, "I forgot my challenge." I think earlier in the month, Fix-A-Geek challenged me to write something for a module, and I have just been so ridiculously busy at work and stuff that yes, I did actually forget to do that. But November's not over. I've got a couple days left, right?
A couple days.
Don't count me out of that fight. No, what was I saying? But yeah, like, because I'm one of the things that I kind of found an interest in as a DM a long time ago was I like creating like really sort of winding plots that require sort of the player to put together a lot of details to figure out exactly where it's going. Which usually means like a lot of the events that they go this way to this way to this way might seem really, really, really disparate and kind of unconnected at the time. And then if they put that together with a clue like later on in the story, they'll kind of realize what's been going on. So like just a quick example of that, when I was doing my home game, I had my players, they were basically being played by this criminal mastermind. So they fought, the first thing they fought was a crime lord, like an ex-crime lord in a warehouse. He was a guy that had touched all their lives in some way. So they killed him. And then the next thing they did was they did some oh god, it's been so long ago. They did that. They went to the sewers to like recover an old adventurer's cache of treasure, and turn it into someone. They took out another guy who was like a drug kingpin, and they cleared the guards off the docks by solving a crime that had happened there. And all these things by themselves don't really seem like they connect in any way, except for that, like, later on, they sort of learned that it was all one. They all were basically paving a way for this one crime lord to take control of, like, the drug shipment in the city so that he could basically substitute his own super drugs in there and have, and just get them right in. And they didn't, I like building those things that don't really make sense until you get all of the pieces. And then on top of that, I started like layering in other plots. So like I like having two parallel plot lines that whenever you're in an event, it's like it could be on either side. It could be this one or this one. Mm-hmm. And then it's only when one of those resolves itself that you actually know sort of which is which. I don't know. I'm a sucker for really convoluted stories like that, I think.
No, that's really cool. Like you intentionally created a power vacuum that the players had a huge part in, and then all of a sudden that dude rises. That's really clever. I like that.
Yeah, I mean those, like I said, I think those are things that, like, if I have enough time, if I have something, because I happen to have something to work with, if I have enough time to work, and you give me like, okay, these are the NPCs in the setting, this, I'm a pretty good editor, I think, story editor. Oh, this character needs more screen time. This event needs more build up, like this and that. Those things I tend to do pretty well with. So when you're writing, do you find yourself like thinking about that, or do you think that kind of long term, or do you plan sort of more in the moment?
A little bit of both. I have big kind of 1940s film noir detective kind of maps as well, where just like, this is the ultimate end goal. This is what will happen at the end of the story. And then all of this in the middle is kind of like loosely connected, but ultimately still moving towards that end goal. And so I have big picture stuff, big NPCs that kind of run things or act as a main antagonist or some oppositional force. And then I have very, very small, I call like micro adventures that they'll do. Right now they're actually, my players just got to a new island that is inhabited exclusively by elves, and they're a very diverse party. They're a half elf, a dwarf, a gnome, and a human, and these elves, they're high elves, they're kind of racist, and so in order to kind of earn their trust a little bit, they're sending them on these micro adventures. So it's little stuff I use to advance the story, but they could totally be, like, it could be anything in there. Mm-hmm. And so it's a little bit of mix of, like big planned story moments with kind of smaller breakups or smaller just less linear, less planned moments in between. And I see Gantwick, he posted in the comments that he makes a place and then works backwards. And I think that, at least for me, that's a really excellent way of world building for me, is that when I made my world, it's called Brannis. When I made this world, I said to myself, okay, I want to know the history of this world, but even before my players step foot in it, I want to know everything that's happened up until that point. So I made these island structures, and every race kind of inhabits their own little island. And then I have it set up so where like they're about 1100 or 1200 years after the creation of the world, and so what's happened for those 1200 years. And so that's what I spent the 3 months of my time writing before we even hit record on the first episode of the podcast, because it was just, that's what really like gets my creative juices going, is okay, I've figured out this place, I know these cities, I know kind of how the world is laid out, so let's bring it to life now. And I'm much like Gantwick, that was my process. It's kind of starting at the end and then working backwards.
Yeah, I think I do a little bit of the other way around. Is I like to start. Generally, I'll tend to start with a theme, something that I like to build on, and it's like, okay, so for example, I want this adventure to be entirely set. I don't want this adventure to be to leave and travel the world like most campaigns do. I want this one to be entirely urban. It's going to take place all within one city. So the important question is, one, how do I start by making this city, how do I make the city interesting and big enough that it can be constantly explored? And two, how do I find a way to make the players' connections here strong enough that they have no intention of leaving, that their desire is to save this place? And then, three, what events can I kind of, can I build in here that ultimately lead up to a really thrilling conclusion, but that may not have far-reaching implications immediately, because we want, again, I like to start with basically I like to start building things, and then I start in one place and then I kind of web out where I'm gonna go next and how things are gonna connect and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea too. I like the concept of keeping everyone localized in one city or one region. That's really interesting to me. Like, that would require such in-depth planning on like even the smallest details. Like, and that totally lends into your like everything's connected web of characters and stuff like that too. That's like, that's really interesting though. That's a really clever idea.
Well, that's the campaign that we've been playing on Fridays, and my private game. We're playing the Curse of the Crimson Throne adventure path, though I've rewritten most of it, and it's interesting because so one of the things I really like to do, and one of the things that I think as a DM has been the best practice for me, has been taking published adventures, published modules and campaigns and stuff, reading them through and finding out, okay, where do I think these things break down, which means like what NPCs, what events don't have enough time spent on them, what needs more time to develop, what needs this, what needs that. Like, if we play these events through, does the tone of the story make sense, or is there a way we can kind of rearrange things into a much more, for example, there's an adventure that Paizo put out, the second book in Rise of the Runelords. It's a really cool story about a murder and tragedy and personal family loss. And it's cool, except for the fact that when I read it, the first thing I noticed was this would play so much better and be so much more dramatic if you took the big set-piece adventure that they put in the center of the book and you made that the finale. And you need to rearrange a lot of stuff in the middle, but it's those kind of editing things that kind of get me thinking about my own game, like how much time do I need to spend with a certain NPC in order for, like, if, for example, you say, I want to do an NPC that my players will initially trust and, and work for, and then he will eventually betray them. Like, how much time do I need to spend on that? How many
what does that build-up look like?
Yeah, how many quests can he send them on, that lead nowhere before they start getting suspicious? How do I adequately lay enough clues on the side that they start thinking something's up, but they only but they don't decide to stab him in the face the next time they see him? Like, that, and those are things that as a DM, like, that's where I kind of stretch my legs and I try and work, because I'm a really technical planner and I really love things like that. And actually that brings me to something I wanted to say, is because at some point as a DM I kind of just gave up on caring how long a campaign lasted. Which means like I will run a campaign for as long as I think it's going to take. It doesn't matter if it's, a year or it's 3 years. So, and you were saying about, your players just got to an island and they're going to go on a bunch of quests there to earn the trust of the locals and stuff like that. Do you sort of have, like, does that fit into an overall time frame, or do you guys, like, do you award experience points for that, or do you just say, like, we're just going to take this, as it progresses naturally and not sort of be shackled by, time constraints?
We're certainly not shackled by time constraints. I think all 5 of us would agree that the show is going to go until something stops us from making the show, or we just are no longer interested in making the show. And thankfully, neither of those have happened yet.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of podcasts out there that are doing like seasons and everything like that. Like,
yeah.
we're going to do 12 episodes of season 1, and then we're going to take a month break, and then we'll start season 2. Like, that's great. I think that creates really powerful planned dramatic moments. But for us, that's just not how we kind of want to operate. We're just going to tell one big continual story arc, and however long it takes to get there, it takes to get there. We may never get there, because as part of the curse of not railroading my players is that they may never have any interest in solving the big puzzle or defeating the big boss or anything like that. And that, as painful as that is, as a creator of Big Boss, that it's something I have to be okay with, and I am okay with it, because I'd much rather my players have a good time and feel like what they're doing matters than like, oh yeah, like you've solved my puzzle, that makes me feel really good as a dungeon master. It's like I'm okay with them going the road less traveled and it taking longer to get there.
Mm-hmm.
If, like I said, even if we never get there at all.
So do you actually, like, do you use, like, experience tracks or anything like that? Or do you just, because I've given up on those. I stopped carrying a long time ago.
I'm pretty loose with my experience. I'm loose with a lot of things in the show. Let's be very clear. If I need to bend the rules ever so slightly to make something cool happen, I'm always gonna make something cool happen rather than not. And if there's ever uncertainty as to like what a spell can do or what the limitations of something is, I'm just gonna work on it. I'm gonna say, no, this is the ruling on the fly. We'll figure it out later. So with that in mind, with experience, I always give experience for enemy fights, for encounters and stuff like that, and I try to always give experience for my players doing cool stuff or really good RP moments. Kind of the same thing as like inspiration dice now, but just like inspiration as well as experience, just because I want to encourage them to really get into the role-playing side of things, really think in character or think of something that only their character could do. Like, oh yeah, like I know that I can only do this to solve this puzzle creatively. Well, I'm always going to reward them for that. But in terms of like, all right, you got to the new island, here's 1,000 experience or something, I don't really play it that way, because much of what our show is almost like an audio drama,
Mm-hmm.
like those old radio style audio dramas. And I don't want to feel like we're like gamifying this. I know it's a game, it's a board game or a tabletop game or whatever, but ultimately I just want to tell a good story. Mm-hmm. And have a story that both my fans and my players are interested in. So I kind of just I'll give them an experience if they ask for it and they've deserved it or they've earned it, and I'll try and give them experience for cool stuff. But we've been playing for 80 episodes, almost a year and a half, and they're only level 6.
See,
so
that's the thing is this actually happened a while back when I was on when Matt was on my show, and I had mentioned to him that my Friday game was playing for 50 and change episodes, give or take, 50 sessions, and they were level 5, and someone yelled at me in the comments when that went up to YouTube, and they're like, oh, what kind of DM is this, 50 episodes, and I'm like, first of all, I misspoke. They were actually level 6, about to, very close to level 7, but we just played episode 63, and they're level 7, and it's like, because I if I were giving them experience for every fight and and everything they did, like, I think we'd be burning through content too fast for my liking,
Yeah. Well, and I'm always my DM style is I would much rather tweak like the stats of an enemy to like either scale them down to make them usable at my current team's level, or scale an easy enemy up to match their level if I think that the enemy offers something cool.
Yeah.
So, for example, like, they fought, well, it was kind of like a half homebrewed monster, half from the book. They fought, in the world, he's a demon lord by the name of Malamet, and he's got this 3-armed, goopy, black, like, rock monster that can walk on the ceiling with his 3 legs, and then he has, like, mind control abilities and stuff like that. But the stats for that character, I just took from, I think, a treant from the monster manual, because the treant has this ability to pick up rocks and throw them at the players and deal a crap load of damage. Just an insane amount of damage. So I kind of like took his abilities and put him on my demon lord, and then I kind of rolled hit points based on it. But at the same time, I don't even hold hit points that dearly.
No.
If what's most important to me is the flow of the battle. So if they're just wailing on a guy that is supposed to be really hard, I'll be like, okay, yeah, you kill him really fast, and you guys feel really good about yourselves because you fought in really good, like, in sync with each other, and everything was really firing on all cylinders. But at the same time, if I've set up this like 5-episode build-up for this really big monster, I'm not going to let him kill him in 2 minutes. So even if they exceed the creature's hit points, I'll just keep going for a little bit until things get interesting, and then and then it'll play out the way it plays out. And I never want to. You have to walk a fine line. DMs out there that adopt this strategy, I want to be very clear. This isn't great all the time, because you walk a fine line then of, well, what if something detrimental happens after you've already like fudged the numbers? And so, for example, what if one of your players dies as a result of this big attack you rolled, and this creature they're fighting was already past their actual hit points, and you're kind of playing past that? Well, like, that's a pretty big deal for a PC to die if this boss or this enemy is already technically past its hit points too. So you kind of got to balance that. Like, for me, it's always about pushing the drama up, like making every fight seem impactful and worthwhile. Like, oh, they're right on the brink of death, and then something happens and they succeed and overcome, and it feels great. But at the same, they can't all be like that for me.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There's got to be those just like, I see that gang, like, talked about the Pineapple Gang, and the Pineapple Gang was those enemies for me. Just this super terrible placeholder enemies that were just meant to make the team feel good about themselves. Like, oh yeah, we killed these guys so fast. We're such awesome adventurers. And so it's good to have those as well. Just cannon fodder. Just, oh yeah, one hit with your sword or one hit with your hammer and they're dead, and you feel really strong.
This is actually a question that people ask me all the time, and it's something that I sometimes grapple with as a DM. Like, you put your players up against. Now, I don't know if you've played. I know less about this in 5th edition because I don't know the HP of like a goblin off the top of my head.
I don't either.
But for example, in Pathfinder, goblins have 6 health, which is like 1 hit, unless they're a wizard punching it in the face. And so it's one of those things where if you create a swarm of these things, like if you throw a bunch of these at the players, and unless they whiff any hits, they're just gonna carve through these things, and a fight might last 1, maybe 2 rounds. And it becomes and if you're reading a lot of modules, it will put these very small hit point monsters like in a room and act as if it's a challenge. And then you're like, is it worth is it even worth rolling initiative for a combat like that?
Right.
Because at what point are you just saying, okay, roll initiative so you can spend 2 minutes, killing a couple skeletons?
and get 50 experience. It's just like it, I'm right there with you. I like my encounters, and especially because we're a purely auditory driven medium. My encounters have to mean something.
Yeah.
So again, on the very rare occasion that they just walk up to an enemy and just wail on it and beat it in 1 round or 2 rounds. If they're gonna fight something, it's usually gonna take up a decent chunk of that episode,
Yeah.
just because fights generate a lot of obviously conflict, and with conflict breeds drama and interesting story elements. So I never want a fight to feel like it was just out of nowhere, like, okay, you killed this thing and like it has no ramifications or story explanation at all. You was just there and you killed it. Like, that to me isn't interesting storytelling either, because why was that thing there in the first place? And was it guarding something? Was it protecting something? Was it sent there to hunt you down specifically? Like, were you its target?
Mm-hmm.
There's all these different things that a battle can answer, or at least like give tidbits about that answer. So I tend to, much like you, just not, if it's gonna be something like, oh, there's just something to fight to waste spells and burn some time, then I'm not really super interested in it.
Yeah, I got into the habit of editing out fights like that when I started DMing on Encounter Roleplay, and they basically the channel, like my friend Will who runs the channel, he said, so you're gonna DM this campaign. It's you have 8 sessions to tell the story of this campaign, and there might be sequels, and there might be later seasons of this campaign, but essentially every campaign on that channel is 8 episodes long. So you have 8 episodes, 3 hours per episode to get through what you need to get through, make it entertaining, and you have to cut a chunk of the time out, because it's like at least 15 minutes in the beginning is all like introduction stuff and all that stuff, and then we have the viewer interaction, the viewer decisions, and things like that. So basically at the end of it, you have maybe 2.5, maybe 2 hours and 15 minutes of playtime that you need to make count. And so as a DM, it's like, okay, I'm literally going, like, I run a lot of adventures out of books there, and it's like just throwing encounters out because it's like, this is a waste of time, we don't have time for this, and basically just leaving in the really, because especially when you look at modules published by like Wizards and Pathfinder, you'll find that they tend to spend the time, like the actual time, writing time, creating really interesting bosses at the end of a dungeon. And then the rest of the dungeon just tends to be like monster manual monsters that you could safely like chuck out and don't matter. So it's like, give them just that really cool monster at the end, and that will take up a good chunk of your show, and you have all the role playing and stuff there, that one would do. And you don't need to waste your time with like the pack of wolves, because what could that possibly add narratively?
Right.
It's yes, you may get some funny moments out of it, but you're not going to advance the story with a pack of wolves. But there was something else I wanted to say about that, and it totally slipped my mind, and I forgot what it was. But yeah, that's right. So the also when it comes to especially looking in books for dungeons and adventures and stuff, I remember I had joined a game that a DM was running. They were running an adventure that I wanted to see. I wanted to see how other DMs played it, mostly because I was in the process of rewriting my own version, and I just wanted to see, I just wanted to kind of kick back and see how another DM handled certain things, and maybe if they happened to do something cool, I would, I might crib it or something like that. And so I got into the session, and what it reminded me very quickly was that a lot of the fights that are being presented to you are presented assuming that you're awarding your players experience, because they need a certain amount of experience to level up. So it's like you have these fights that don't actually serve any story purposes, like a giant crab comes out of the water and you have to fight him so they don't destroy your boats. And it's like, but why would the giant crab, like, does fighting a giant crab on the beach, is that interesting? It doesn't seem interesting to me. And I was talking to this DM and I said, so you have this crab fight, right? If you go a couple pages later, there's this really, really cool fight where the players row out into the middle of the river to go to like this Viking longboat where this Viking leader is supposed to be being burned. It's like his funeral pyre. But they're supposed to go onto the boat to retrieve a piece of his treasure, right? And as soon as they go under the deck and get the treasure and start coming out, the boat will be lit on fire and attacked by ninjas. And it's a really cool set piece, right? And I'm like, okay, if you take the crab fight and you cut that, then what you can do is when you have this really cool set piece, you can keep that enemy and throw it in the middle of that big set piece fight. Because, like, what happens if you have this really cool fight, but it's not going your player's way? Make the crab bust out of the water, and he can start grabbing the ninjas, and, you know, and just sort of be an impromptu help. Like, those are the kind of things that I think as a DM, like, DM should be open to think about and analyze. But you're absolutely right. Is like, you know, I never use an encounter that's not gonna help you deliver something interesting to your players, you know, narratively or challenge wise. And also, just back to about keeping, like, because you and I are on the same page about enemy health. My rule has always been, even if an enemy's gonna die, they should always stick around 1 round extra, just so they can do that one cool power that they haven't gotten to do, right?
Yeah,
like, they have a cool power, let them use it, let them get that off, and then let them die, you know?
Yeah.
Because that's why you write it, so the players can, you know, you don't want to have an enemy with a really cool ability or spell, and then it just never happened, because I think it's slightly a wasted opportunity in that point. Like, you're there to tell a cool story. And so I always tend to keep my big powerful enemies around just long enough for them to do something really, really cool and threatening and dangerous, and then it's like, okay, then you can let your players wail on them and kill them.
Yep, I totally agree.
So yeah, Bear says, I've never thought about rewriting modules. I'll certainly, so modules are interesting, and I don't know if, like, I'm one of the only people I know that really, really collects them. I have a whole folder. Wow, that music is fucking intense. Hold on, let me change that. The background music is blasting. Let's put on something more relaxing. What do you think? But yeah, I have a whole folder on my computer of adventure modules, everything from like 2nd edition to 3rd edition. I don't have much from 4th, but there are a few standouts. 5th edition, I have all the Pathfinder stuff, and especially Dungeon Magazine is really, really good. And if you are a DM who finds yourself having problems coming up with, like, on the fly ideas, or it's like, oh, I need to fill a session, or, you know, there's a thing coming up and I don't know what kind of dungeon to send them in, or I just need an idea of something really cool and flavorful. I like to flip through all my modules and be like, oh, this is a little story about an innkeeper who is secretly using his alliance with a band of goblins to rip off merchants that stay in his inn. You know, that's a really cool idea. I can rip that out and reflavor it and have that show up somewhere in my campaign if I just need, you know, I need the players to be kept busy for a little while something else is going on. You know, I do that a lot, again, because I'm a bad writer, so I tend to steal ideas, and I think that's part of being a DM, is just, like, find people and stories that inspire you and then steal them liberally.
Oh, man. I think that's just, like, creating anything, really. Art, you know, music, film. Like, it's just, like, find someone that inspires you, find anything that, like, makes you go, wow, that's awesome, and then just kind of make it your own thing.
Yeah. There was, I don't know if you've ever heard it, there was a podcast when I started DMing. There was a show called the Dungeons Master podcast, which it was a pretty unknown show. They have a blog, and I think it's still going today. But I happened to hear a podcast of them running Tomb of Horrors, and the DM was really, really good, and the players were really good, and it was a 4th edition game. But it's just one of those things where, like, so much of the stuff that I heard in that podcast, and then in later DM shows of other DMs that I've listened to, has just kind of incorporated and built the way that I run things today. Because as an artist, you know, one of the things I know is no one starts out with their own style. Like, you can't. It doesn't work like that. You know, developing your own style is very much what Reed just said. It's a process of finding the things that you like. Okay, I like the way this guy handles descriptions. I like the way this guy handles dice rolling. I like the way this guy does voices. and you incorporate, you do, those things. You incorporate the bits that you like, and when you put them all together, you will have a combination that is unique. It's something that no one else is doing because it's yours. It's, it's your combination of your own inspirations, and I think that's how every creator kind of comes up with their own voice.
Oh, definitely. And the longer you do something, the longer you take the time to be creative or create content, you're going to figure out your own way of doing things, even beyond just like regular, oh, I saw some other guy do this, and so I'm going to try and do that on my show or in my game or something like that. You'll come up with something that just works for your players organically. Something that you thought might not land at all, or you did not think your players would be interested in, they're going to latch onto, and you're like, that's, for some reason they really like it. So now you've got a cue of like, okay, if I need to create like an engaging thing again, I'll kind of like, what did they like about what I did earlier, and then I can modify that. So you're actually like taking your own ideas and your own stories and twisting them a little bit to keep your players engaged and stuff like that.
Yeah, one of the things that I heard early on that really kind of has stuck with me is when I heard the Tomb of Horrors podcast, I heard the DM say like, I'm gonna be rolling all your perception checks for you, right? He's like, you just tell me the bonus, and I was like, oh, that's really, really cool, because at the time I was a new DM and I was fighting, I was looking for a way to kind of counter what players do, where it's like you enter a room and everyone's like, oh, he didn't find anything, I'll roll a perception check too, you know. Or he rolled a 1. Yeah, no, I'm also looking. And so I started doing, originally it was just hidden perception checks, but in my home game we do every skill roll. So it's like perception, diplomacy, knowledges, all those kinds of things are made hidden, so the players don't actually see the results of the rolls. They just know that they rolled, and they know the information that they're given as a result.
Right.
And it's up to them to determine whether the information they're getting is because they rolled low or they rolled high, and there just isn't, like, if you say, oh, you don't find anything, well, did we just miss it, or is there actually nothing to find?
There's nothing to find. Yeah.
And it's basically it removes a little. I'm big on removing meta game stuff from the hands of the players, because I like the idea that the players don't have that information to focus on. The only thing they have to focus on is, like, if I tell you don't find anything, then you know exactly what your character knows. Mm-hmm. And so you don't have to worry about that outside distraction of, oh, I rolled a 1.
Yep. And I played a game like that once. It was just a one-off session where everything was pre-planned for a one-night session. And at the beginning, because I was playing with a group of 4 players, but 3 of them had never played D&D before, and so at the very beginning, I was like, okay, I'm gonna roll all your stuff for you. You tell me what you want to do, and then I'll translate that information into what your character knows. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, in my style, I like, in much the same way that I like my players to feel like they're contributing to the story or contributing to the outcome of events, I like them to feel like they have some control over that kind of stuff. So I let them roll. I totally get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Be like, yeah, like from the story perspective and the non-metagaming side, I love it. But at the same time, like, just there's some piece of me like, well, I rolled a 1, like Reed rolled a 1, but that doesn't necessarily mean like Josh would have rolled a 1 or something like that. So I was like, I put it all on them.
Yeah.
Because then I start feeling bad, like, oh man, I'm rolling really poorly for you guys. Sorry.
Well, see,
I'm just like, nope. Any success or failure is entirely on you guys.
Well, that's the thing.
I want to take that responsibility.
I get to shirk that. I don't get to feel that guilt, because the way we do it, we play on Roll20. I have an API script that lets them actually make the roll. They just don't see the result.
Oh, that's nice.
Yes, so when they roll a 1, I don't have to feel guilty about it. I'm also not like, I'm not a dice superstition guy. But
I totally am.
But even if I was, I would not be able to feel guilty. But no, it's you're right, and it's not something that I've pitched it to groups, to new groups, and some people are like, oh, I don't know how that would how I would feel about that. And then, they do it for a little while, and it just kind of becomes second nature. Like they learn to function with it, and it, for my group, we found that it facilitates a lot more interesting role play. Like they're a lot less focused on what they rolled and more focused on you know, the how, the why, and the when. It's like not everyone's diving on every perception check. Not everyone's rolling knowledge. You know, they're only doing it when they have a relevant skill in there. And it's it also, because for me it creates a lot more of a tone of, you know, you don't really know exactly what's going on. You have it as a player, you have a little less grasp on the mechanics of the situation, the pure numbers in front of you. So there's a little bit more of that kind of uncertainty and kind of tension. It works really well for if that's what you're going for in your games. You know, if it's sort of a lighthearted kind of, you know, humorous game, might not be for you. You know, which is why I never say to DMs, like, this is the way to do it this way, and your game will be 100% better. Like, no, it's very much your mileage may vary, but if you're looking for something interesting to try with your games, you should definitely do it, especially if you're doing, like, a one-shot or a horror game or something. It just adds that sort of extra layer of uncertainty to everything.
Yeah, and then you as the DM get to hold that information for a split second and be like, you rolled... But
I never tell them what they roll. Yeah,
you look through the chest, but you don't find the missing amulet of such and such. And it's just like, oh man, like there's that little bit of, you can play with them a little bit.
Yeah, there's like it's I would definitely look at it as just like it's a tool from that you can use in your DM toolbox if you ever feel the need to. I have a lot of weird tools that not like that I like the E6, like the non-leveling D&D games, is one of them too. It's one of the ways I kind of combat bloat and stuff like that. But all right, so here we're kind of coming up on we've come up on the top of the hour, and we've just been hanging out for a little while. But we do have a bunch of people chilling with us in chat, and I know you guys are chomping at the bit with those questions and topics you have been holding on to. So Why don't I go ahead like this? I'm going to go ahead and write a tweet just to let everyone on Twitter know they can come in and join us if they want to with their questions and topics. Here's what we're going to do. If you guys have something you want to, you want to make sure is asked, either put it in chat with a big, the word question in all capitals, so I don't miss it, because sometimes I do, or you can just do @ExplodingDice in the chat, and that'll highlight it for me, and then that means I absolutely won't miss it. And just share, as Dice Thulu will inform you, Fuzzy Dice, for those of you who are just joining us, you're joining us on Fuzzy Dice, the DM show here on the Exploding Dice channel, which is your weekly hangout for DM discussion, questions and answers, and all other kinds of fun. I'm hanging out with Reed, the Dungeon Master for Sneak Attack Podcast.
What up?
Yeah, and we're just having a good time. So shoot those questions to us in chat. Dice will parse them. And thank you so much, Kevin R2220 or 220, for following. Welcome to the madness, my friend. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for the support. I'm gonna write out a tweet, and we are going to take some questions in a second. Also, if you Reed, if you see any in chat while I'm doing this, you're welcome to read them out yourself. Don't feel like I'm the only one who can. I don't have all the power. All right.
Well, while you're writing that tweet,
yes.
I see a question that just came in from Downtown Jen. Thanks, Downtown Jen. The question is, how much do you collaborate with your players to create their backstory? For Sneak Attack, the backstories seem to coincide with the world and with each other quite seamlessly, and that's a really good question. When we first started, I met with all four of my players individually, and I gave them as much information as their character would have in the world. So for Greg, for example, I gave him a full Dwarven breakdown of everything that's happened up until that point on the Dwarven island, but he pretty much got no information on any of the other islands because that does not pertain to him as a dwarf. And I did the same thing for Brenna, the half-elf, and Sherwood, and stuff like that. And then I worked with them to actually come up with their backstories, and they would say, okay, I'm kind of feeling like my character would come from this background or from this cultural background or type of environment. And so then I would say, oh, okay, that's cool because I have this NPC or this group of people that kind of that correlate with that a little bit. So we can say that you worked with them or that you're now on the run from them or something like that. Just I encourage every DM when they're starting out to take that time and to work with their players to actually figure out where their players are coming from and how that can actually tie into the world. And so I appreciate you saying that it feels really seamless, because that was something, again, we tried very, very hard to accomplish, was to make it feel like the players, they're not just like plopped in the world and everything they did before they got there is irrelevant. Like, they have actual weight and actual consequence of things that have happened before the group got together as a whole. So thanks, Downtown Jen.
Yeah, I definitely I agree with that. Actually, doing player backstories and kind of player connection to the world is something I've been working on the past couple years. In a few games I've started. When we started Crimson Throne on Fridays, one of the things I really made sure to do, and I also did it as much as I could with Jade Regent, which is our Sunday game here, is I like to sit down and I like to talk the players, like say, okay, well, obviously, what do you want? Like, what kind of character do you want to play? Like, what are you looking to do? What is interesting to you? And then I will walk them through like where we can find a way to fit that into the world. You know, so where, okay, you want to be a sorcerer, like a monk type sorcerer. Well, there's an abbey here, and you know these are the people in it, and you know is there anything interesting you want to do there? And then we'll write it. I absolutely love sitting down and asking players what they foresee their character arc to be, because everyone, when you build a character in your head. By the way, what's going on, Bird vs. Plane? How you going? How's it going, man? Says he's listening on his drive home. Thank you so much, man. You are awesome. No, I like to, because everyone, when they build a character, they kind of have a vision in their head of what that character looks like at the end of the game. Very rarely do they think about what that character looks like at the beginning of the game. And one of the things I'm big on is the fact that a character arc is not really something you can plan. It should be very much unplanned. So when a player's, I like to talk about where they see their character going, especially like what that character's beliefs and goals are. What are their priorities when they're setting out adventuring? Is it to become the strongest fighter in the land? Is it to be, to earn enough money to buy their family out of slavery? Whatever it is, they have a goal and a set of priorities in mind. And then I like to return to those things later, like 5 levels or so later, and say, okay, so the events of the campaign have happened. You've been through all these things that you could not foresee. You obviously can't plan for these things. Have they shifted your beliefs, your priorities, your goals in any way? Where is your character now as opposed to where they were 5 levels ago?
Yeah.
And then it's that kind of feedback that really helps me sort of decide because it's all about what the players are perceiving about the game and what they're looking for. And then I think as DMs, we kind of have an obligation to help them shape that. Obviously, our goal is not to give them the exact character arc they envisioned at the beginning, but rather to give them something unexpected and interesting for them to latch onto.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But always, as much as try and get as much as you can out of your players, about their character and stuff at the beginning, because it's that information that hopefully you're going to be building on later. If you're lucky if you have players that you can say, like, hey man, I'm dropping an NPC into the world, and he's going to have, or an NPC walks up to him and say, I knew you when you, like, I'm your rival, and then the player can play off that. But if you don't think that you're going to be able to do that in the moment, like, that's stuff you definitely want to talk about beforehand. Their relationships. Oh, this is another thing, and you can actually weigh in on this, Reed. One of the things that I've started doing is having my players create NPCs that they have connections to. Not huge ones, but usually small ones that are a part of the setting. Like, one of the biggest things about getting my players invested in the city that we're playing in is because obviously a city is very, very big. You can't realistically just know... You can't say, like, oh, we're in the city, I'm going to go see Steve, and then just make up a Steve. On the fly, but it's really interesting. You say, okay, create 3 NPCs in the city that maybe people you have relationships with, maybe old friends, basically people that you can go to in times of need or talk to when you need information, this and that. And like my players create like city guardsmen that they have that used to arrest them when they were young, or drug dealers that they buy from, or tavern owners and barmaids that they know. And those things also help sort of anchor the players to the world and help me sort of build around them and build for them, basically.
Oh yeah, you're dead on the money. And one of the best ways, I think, that one of our characters, Brenna, and Greg too, to even that extent, that they're able to add a lot of weight and emotional resonance to their characters, is by having a really compelling backstory that included NPCs that our players have never met so far in the campaign. But I mean, for example, we just got to this elf island specifically to talk to Brenna's dad, that the players have never met, but he's like this looming figure that people are aware of. People like our players know about him, and he's this important guy. And I had nothing to do with the creation of this guy. It was all Brenna, which is excellent. It's awesome. And so yeah, I totally agree. Like, that's a really excellent tool for anyone who's coming up with a campaign to ask your players, like, 2 or 3 people that just mean a lot to them or have some form of impact on their lives. Like, and then you as the DM can just run wild with that. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's especially because you can. It's a good way of finding out where that player's priorities for that character lie. If that player comes up with a tavern owner and a guardsman who used to arrest them, like when they were in a gang, like, well, then pretty much you have a good idea of where this character's kind of milieu is and what you may have to work with later on. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm trying. I wish I could remember what podcast or game I learned that tip from, but it's been extremely helpful. All right, let me turn that down a little bit. All right, so we got a next question from Greg. No, that he wants to know where this big boss is and can they actually kill him or her.
Greg, you'll find out when you die from it. That's my answer.
Yeah, no, that's the best way to find out about enemies, really.
Yeah. Greg has a way of falling face first into trouble. And yeah, so Greg is very familiar with who the 2 what I call main antagonists, the 2 big bosses in my game are, and he's had a run-in with both of them, actually. So
well, the question is, does he know that he's had a run? Like, if you say, like, oh, they've had a run-in with both of them, would they be like, is it a mystery as to who they may be, or do they actually know? No, this guy's fucking evil.
Yeah, no, he knows.
Oh, okay.
he knows, and like, yeah, those are 2 that he's aware of. Let's be very clear on that. There's plenty of other oppositional forces out in the world that they have not yet met or been made aware of.
Bear the Beartastic says, question, how does one balance combat and storytelling? I oftentimes have a difficulty balancing combats and the important plot points. Do you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, honestly, that's a real struggle for me. If I could have a show that was like just talking and with no combat, I'd be okay with that, because that's what grinds my gears and really like gets me going. But at the same time, I know that because what we mentioned earlier, how I dole out XP and stuff like that and loot, you get it through awesome encounters. And for those of you that listen to our show, the Temple Saga, those 9 episodes in the Temple of Melius the Enraged, that was really fun for me because it was a way of doing both story and combat, and all of the combat either drew from the story or built towards the story. And so, like we said earlier, if you have an encounter that ultimately doesn't lead anywhere, it's just a pack of wolves for the sake of a pack of wolves, then I would seriously consider whether or not it's necessary. But if you're playing a game where your players just want to fight things all the time and get XP, that's okay too. Like, that's what they're into. Then it's okay to just like have there be random encounters if that's what they like. But yeah, I would say it's always be thinking about your encounter, about the enemies you're fighting, and what what they actually lend to what they lend to the game itself and the story itself. And I'm laughing at Conch Shell Dad, but we'll get to that one in a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
bit. Sorry.
I people have asked me this since since the dawn of time, basically. Basically, and it happened. It started long before I was ever doling out DM advice on the internet. I remember thinking this back when I was like on Roll20 years ago, looking at game, either running my, making ads for my own games or looking for games. And one of the things that I saw most commonly was people would send me messages saying like, what percentage of this game will be combat versus role playing? Like, is it like a 60-40 thing, or is it like a 50? Because I prefer a 50-50. And I'm like, in my head, the thing that I always think over and over is like, I don't see a difference between the two. Like, there's no reason why, like, and it's the same thing when you're talking about combat versus storytelling. Like, there's no, storytelling doesn't stop just because you rolled initiative, in fact, rather the opposite. D&D and role-playing games are at their strongest when a fight is is advancing the story in an interesting and dramatic way, because that tends to be where the most dramatic events happen, is those fights. Because you can role play a dramatic event, like a big secret reveal, or like a Luke, I am your father type thing, and have a big kind of dramatic note play in the background, and those are great. But the difference about combat is you can have those same sort of narrative moments, but they're also made even more tense by the fact that things could sway in either direction. The players could learn something, the tide can turn on them, not just narratively, but also mechanically. And that kind of adds a lot of, a lot of pressure and weight to those events. So don't, just because you roll initiative, like, you don't have to stop talking, monologuing in character as the villain, or you don't have to stop thinking about, what comes next. And like you said, make sure your encounters are telling part of that story. When they need to find something important, make them fight something for it. When you have a villain, make that villain protecting a secret or something, and when they kill him, they get a piece of the puzzle. And that's, so my advice there is always don't separate the two, because they're not separate. They're just two sides of the same coin. They're just two tools in your arsenal. You use roleplay at one point and use combat when you feel it's necessary. Never have a combat just for the sake of a combat. It always ends up boring, I think.
I agree.
Okay. Bear again asks, Reed, what NPCs do you mourn the most? The ones that you had plans for but were interrupted by their sudden demise.
So specifically, I can't see the question anymore. It's gone on my feed. But specifically asking which NPCs I miss, or like people that have NPCs that have passed away.
It says the ones that you had plans for, but I guess they died before those came to fruition.
Ooh, that is a good one. I would say, well, a little spoiler alert, and this is a true spoiler alert if you're not all the way through our show, or at least not to the Chronicum section, which is like a 4 or 5 episode arc around episode 40 or 50, I think. After that sequence of events, there's actually a pretty significant time jump. They move forward in time very, very fast, and they're not even made aware that they leaped forward in time. And so there's a character that passes away in that 35-year jump, named Thalen Brightspire. She was kind of the ruler of this area that they were in, and she passed away in those 35 years, she was always one of my favorites, because she was one of those NPCs that I put a lot of time and planning into her backstory and kind of her rise to power, along with her twin brother Tegan, and what that looked like. So that was tough for me, but anytime I've had an NPC die, and like Furman, for example, and stuff like that, it sucks. Like, I'll say, like, because I'm the most invested in these characters because I'm the one that took the time to like birth them out of nothing, and which sounds very dramatic, but like when Furman died, I actually got a little choked up at it. I was like, I didn't want the role to hit, I didn't want it to happen, but I'm never gonna pull that punch because that's the best kind of drama. That's the best kind of storytelling there is when what you're saying and what you're doing has weight and actually makes you feel something. And so to lose Thalen very early on, I guess not early, but just without a lot of her kind of backstory being revealed, I was kind of bummed out about. But at the same time, it needed to happen because it not only pushed the story into a different direction with, this guy's risen to power and all these terrible things, but also her twin brother Tegan and what that did to him is now a really cool story element and a story piece that I'm really proud of, and I feel like my players and our listeners actually like latched onto really strongly. So I would say, just to answer that question, I would say Thalen was the hardest one to lose, but it's not without like its own benefits or advantages of like in the storytelling itself.
Yeah, NPCs are interesting, mostly because I sort of how did I want to word this? I was thinking about this and it just kind of just passed me by. If I'm a big fan of not putting an NPC in danger or never put an NPC in a fight if you're not prepared for them to die.
Yeah.
Basically, people tell me this all the time. They say like, oh, I'm gonna put my players up against this villain, but I want the villain to be an ongoing, antagonist. And it's like, well, then don't put him in a fight because, you don't know what's gonna happen, and I promise you, your players are gonna find a way to surprise you, and get a crit as he's running away or something like that. And it's and it's the same thing with NPCs that you like, player, allies and stuff. If you put them in combat, just like you're saying, like there is the chance that the enemy will roll a hit on them, and they will go down. Now, which is not to say don't do it, because obviously, like you said, it does create these very, very dramatic moments, and it is kind of NPCs, for all intents and purposes, are expendable for the sake of drama. Like, if killing one, or if allowing one to die will create the kind of the drive that your players need to push a story forward, like, if they need to see someone that they grew to like, get crit to death or get smashed into pulp in order for them to really buy into the rage and the kind of emotion that's going to send them on the journey to kill the big bad guy, then, by all means, that is a tool in your toolbox. Do not be afraid to do that. But, don't put them in a fight. Like, don't give the players an ally in a fight if it's, if it will absolutely crush you to watch that NPC die, because it will happen, and you will be, you'll be sitting there looking at your dice being like, fuck, why did this was a horrible decision. But yeah, it's, oh man, I'm trying to think of, if I had any NPCs die that I really, really didn't want to. I don't think I have. I've had NPCs, like, I've had villains die when it would have been more interesting for the players to keep them alive, to maybe ask questions or something like that, and the players just instead decided to butcher them on the spot. Like, I've had things like that happen, but I don't think I've ever had an NPC that I really wanted, to live or had big plans for just bite it in combat. Mostly because, like I said, I tend to not make those plans. When I'm making those big plans, I tend to evaluate, like, okay, what NPCs are still around for me to use?
Yeah.
I actually got a question. Again, let me find it, because I got a question from Twitter earlier. There we go. Okay. So we're still, if you guys are hanging out in chat, please shoot us those questions or topics you want us to discuss. We're taking them for a little while now. I actually have a couple questions people have sent me on Twitter, so I'm gonna get to those. I answered that one last time. Okay. So Mr. Jimmy Fuckface on Twitter says that he's got a fairly large a party of 6, and he says, I was wondering how to keep things from getting too linear and kind of kick in the door murder hobo style playing. He's I want to keep things fresh and exciting, but I'm not sure how I'll manage that. So, do you have any particular methods that you use to sort of encourage your players to be a little more circumspect in their playing, or do you just kind of let them do as they will?
I kind of let them do as they will. Thankfully, I don't have players that really are the okay. I meet someone, I immediately murder him type. And I think too, it's important to realize, like, within your party composition, that hey, like your actual human composition of friends and people playing the game, that like, hey, there's some mutual respect there. I'm going to build this world for you, take the time to make it interesting and engaging for you, and I would appreciate it if you would actually like participate and not just immediately try and kill a whole town, because at that point, like, why are you even playing this game? It's not for the exploration, the combat, or the adventure. Like, it's not for any of those things. Then if it's just to throw a wrench in the mix to be a troll, then maybe I would reconsider. But if the struggle with 6 players is very real, and trying to keep them all focused can be a challenge, one thing I would really do is, I'd focus on, is a threat or a quest or something that has all of their interests in mind, which can be really challenging.
Very difficult for 6 people.
Very, very challenging. So, like, if your party comp is all over the place in terms of goals or objectives or alignments, it can be very difficult. But in my game, for example, in the podcast, Greg started out as a lawful good. I want to help as many people as I can, and so it's very easy to get him to buy in on something. Oh, there's the quest. If someone's in trouble, someone needs help. I'm do it. I'm the guy to do it. You're like, okay, great. I never have to worry about Greg being like standoffish or anything like that. However, the Wizard Akio, he was more interested in his own pursuits and his own self-interest. So how do I get him involved? Well, really what you do then is you just come up with a quest, or you come up with a mission that really just kind of caters to him. You say, oh yeah, this guy's in trouble, or this person needs something, and he's located here. And that place he's located is someplace of great interest to Akio, or a great interest to one of your players. You go, oh, okay. Now, the first guy, Greg, for me, he's already on board because it's a quest. He wants to help someone. But now all of a sudden I've got the more standoffish guy involved, and that should really wrangle up the whole party right there and be like, okay, like, yeah, he wants to do it. He wants to do it. This guy, these two are just going to tag along just because. And hopefully that creates a little bit more buy-in, a little bit more legitimacy to getting them actually involved, rather than just be like, I'm just along for the ride and I'm gonna like screw up your plans, and that's that. So I mean, I hope that answers your question. There's no real perfect formula for this is how you make a six player party succeed, because it's depending on your party comp, it's just going to be tricky.
So when you're doing my advice there is, obviously when you have 6 people, it really depends who those 6 people are. If, for example, you have a group of people who are all like good longtime friends who know each other, then you tend to, not always, but you tend to get something that happens in a lot of groups like that, where the players are not necessarily playing for themselves. They're playing for the rest of the group, and so they will make choices that enable the rest of the group to have more fun, and that's kind of I think that's one of the sort of secret ingredients that makes a lot of groups, stand, kind of above the normal D&D game, is like when you have all the players who are there specifically to enable everyone else's fun, which kind of, it's a circular thing. It leads to everyone having fun. But If they're all just, you know, 6 people who are coming together with their own ideas of how to play and, you know, what's interesting and what's entertaining, then yeah, you can find yourself sort of at an impasse when it comes to entertaining all of them. And it may not, you know, not every quest and not every session may engage all those people, which is difficult, because you have a lot of competing egos and beliefs and ideas there. I would say, to prevent keeping things linear, what I would do is I would probably rope the group together and have them create their own group. Like, have them work together to basically form form some sort of organization that has specific goals that govern all of them. So, for example, if you say your players come together and say, okay, we are now an adventuring guild called the Adventuring Guild, and our goal is to help people complete quests and earn money. So that means that we will, we don't have to worry about fighting between ourselves about where to go and what quests to take, and, whether we help this guy or that guy, or whether we, do this or that, because we've all decided on a goal and we're all working towards the betterment of our group, not necessarily our own individual plot points. That may be one way to govern them. Giving the players like an organization or a guild or a name. Or you could, I guess, go the other way, which is like have the enemy they face be, the gang that one player worked for is also, is allied with the wizard that has the secret tomes that the sorcerer wants, that is also allied with the demon that gave the warlock their powers, and, they're all in the same place, so the group has to go there, and, all their interests are aligned there. But yeah, it really, there's also the potential idea that you may have to, some people may just not fit with the group. I don't know. Without specifics, it's kind of hard to address, but I agree with a lot of what Reed said too. So definitely, yeah, go ahead.
It can just get tough. It's just going to be tough, and you're gonna have a little bit to figure out that party dynamic, and then hopefully their ideals are kind of aligned with yours, and that everyone just wants to have a good time, and that you can make that happen.
This is just a personal thing, I have a rule that says every player above 4 that you have in combat is going to increase the time that every combat takes by 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And so the more players you add, it just means that you're going to be playing a lot longer, and you have to be prepared for that. And that's not just, it doesn't just go for players. It goes to like players that have pets and allies and stuff. Oh my god, that one time I had a summoner in the party, and he summoned like D8 eagles every fight.
That's too much.
It's horrible, because I don't know if you know in Pathfinder, but when you summon an animal or a monster, right? It comes in with one command that you're allowed to give it. And then after it carries out the command, the DM controls it, because it's supposed to just behave like an animal. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, so now as a DM, I'm controlling all of the enemies and all of these things that are now just summoned into combat. And it's like, please don't ever do this again. I don't want this in my game, because it just takes so long. Oh man, so thank you. Hope that answers your question. Please feel free to shoot me more questions on Twitter. It's just @Asker, and you can see it's right below me, right there. We will answer those. Bear again is asking, so besides the Pineapple Gang, what menial plot points did you not expect the party to explore further? Were you, I guess, and also were there any storylines that you were saddened by their abandonment or commitment to?
Well, I think the Pineapple Gang is obviously the biggest one. That was, I don't think anyone could have predicted how seriously they took that threat. But some plot points that they didn't explore further that kind of saddened me. I spend a lot of time when I make towns and cities coming up with shops, specifically shop names, because I think pun-laden shop names is probably the best thing you can ever do. And so there's been a lot of shops that I've come up with that they've never stepped foot in, and so actually a little bit of a if you want to go back and listen to some episodes, they'll sometimes ask like, well, what shops are around, and I will always say there's a specific kind of shop around, just on the hope that they ever need to go there, because I have this funny, or what I find funny, shop owner, and he's got some wacky side quest that you could do for him.
but you've never gotten to use it yet?
I've never got to use it. Yeah, so like a year and a half, he's just been sitting in there, and so it's stuff like that.
Is it like
I can't?
That shop is conveniently in whatever town they happen to be in?
Oh yeah, always. If they need if they ever need a specific type of item or device, then I guarantee you the shop will be around if they want to go there. I think we've missed a few questions along the way. I don't want to.
Did I
forget it? I don't want to forget anybody. I think there was one before Bear's last question.
I may have missed it. Which one? More than the most. Oh, I see. Oh, Conch Shell Dad said, Reed, who's your favorite player and why is it Sherwood?
I forgot that was the one. Conch Shell Dad. It's a suspicious username. I love it, but it's suspicious. My favorite player is Akio, and he's gone now. So rip. What are you gonna do?
Oh man. When you're talking about the plot points that you didn't expect your players to take very strongly, I remember this happened in two different games. The first game, I have a very similar NPC in both of them. In my Jade Region game, I decided to play this one wizard, the town sage, as like this crazy dude. And so the first time the party goes to his house, he basically, like, they knock on his door and they hear him talking, like yelling somewhere in the house, and he continues yelling as he makes his way to the door. And he'll just open the door mid-sentence and he says like, I don't know, and I have nothing to do with you, and I told you, here are your books, thank you, good day. And he just slams the door in their face, and he hands them a stack of books, and they're like, what do we do with these? And then, so my party decided that they were going to hang on to these books until they could deliver them to someone, even though they don't know who they're supposed to deliver them to.
Oh, that's awesome.
And they were in the house of a dead wizard very recently, and they found his library, and they're like, oh, can we put the books here? And they did. They put the book. I'm like, yes, there's room to put the books on their shelf. They're like, quest completed!
That's all they needed. It was just to return expired library books. That's great.
They didn't know who or what they were for. And then there's a very similar NPC. He runs a magic shop in my Curse of the Crimson Throne game, and so the players had to go into this there's this island section of the city that was quarantined. It was basically, they burned all the bridges, and they said that place is dead to us, because it was always kind of a lawless town. And when the plague hit the city, they just basically wrote that place off as a loss. And the players had come back from a dungeon, they had a bunch of magic loot, and they went to this wizard who was a friend of theirs. And that music is really loud. They went to visit him, and they were like, they were like, can you do this for us? And he said, yeah, no, I can help you with that. Oh, of course, it's in the same voice. Like, yes, I can help you with that. Because that's my wizard voice, if you haven't realized.
Naturally.
And so he said, I will help you if you do something for me. I had a shipment that got lost in Old Corvosa. And so he basically told them that he has a shipment that he lost track of. He didn't tell them what it was. He didn't even tell them where he lost it. He just told them that it was lost somewhere in Old Corvosa. And they've been in that quarantine part of town for like the past couple episodes. They're trying to rescue a friend there. And they are adamant about finding this shipment, even though they have no idea what they're looking for. And because they have a habit of just accepting quests and missions without asking for more details. And so they're adamant that they're going to find it, but they have no idea what it is. And so those are the things that sort of just like, I literally just had him say this because they know he's like a crazy old man and he just says things. I did not expect them to take it as seriously as they have. And so when they
never plan on that stuff.
That's what I say, when they eventually find this what shipment of whatever it is, it has to be something good because they already the first time they went into a shop, they broke his shipment of invisible walking sticks. Which had them laughing for about 10 minutes, and then one of my players took a piece of one, and he's found uses for it. But yeah, so that I have to find a good thing to be in this.
Has to be worth the build up.
It does, yeah. Which again, that's the thing is players. You never know what players are going to focus in on. I've said this so many times that if your players are walking through town square and you just happen to decide, and there's a tree in the center, there's a with little flowers hanging from it, like your players are like, why did he describe the tree? Is that important? Should we investigate the tree? I investigate the tree. And then, they are convinced that that is the center of your world. Like that is the important thing, just because you mentioned it.
Okay. I see Downtown Jen had another question.
Yeah, absolutely.
How much of how much of your overall story arc do you have written before your first session? For the overall story arc for our game at least was entirely completed before we ever hit record. I know exactly who the villains are, how, like, what their motivations are, how it's all going to plan out, what the fate of the world ultimately will come to, one way or another. I know those things. So it seems like, again, I'm trying to avoid spoilers, but it seems like everyone here is all caught up. So I'll go ahead and continue. But if you haven't caught up, we'll buyer beware of any potential spoilers there. But the whole kind of twist or story arc where Sylvana is not the only god in the world, and she has a mother, and like as Brenna puts it, Sylvana is like a bratty teenage girl. That's been in the plan this whole time. That was never something I came up with on the fly or halfway through. I very distinctly and very clearly mapped that out as part of the story arc, and that amulet was always that way of discovering that information. So also on the converse side of that, the book that they didn't take at the end of the Chronicum saga, there's a lot of information to be gleaned from that we'll probably never know. So it's there's a lot of like give and take with that. Is I overplan and then use only as much as needed in order to keep it interesting, in order to make sure that, again, that what they're doing feels like it's directly impacting the game. So good question. That took about 3 months of like nightly writing or nightly planning to put everything together before we ever actually started recording.
Yeah, I like to plan in like levels of detail. And there are very, very few specifics that I lay down concretely. But if you've ever played a video game, you know how like things really far away are like real simple and not detailed, but the closer you get to them, the more it fills in. So it's like build very basic, like this chunk of the story, then this chunk of the story, then this chunk of the story, and villain, and then as you kind of get closer and closer to them, you kind of fill in the gaps based on what the players are doing and what they're focusing on and what's important. Because I think laying down specifics that early in advance tends to kind of become a writing trap sometimes.
A little bit, and like you said, your players are always going to do stuff that surprises you.
Yeah.
So to really like lock in on something that early on, that's okay if that's how you want to go, but I would always lean towards letting my players kind of dictate the flow of that. So like I said, I have the big ideas, the big concrete. This is what's going to happen. How we get there, totally up for debate. Yeah,
I guess the best advice is, even if you're going to write, don't marry yourself to the idea, because, always be open to change. So let's take these last couple questions real quick, even though I know some of them are a little bit longer. Ogozilla says, I have a PC who had to leave but returned in the future and was often ostracized and not trusted on account that he's a necromancer. Thinking of bringing him back as a villain as opposed to an ally PC. I don't know if that's a question, but okay.
Yeah.
No,
I like that idea personally.
yeah.
I love the thought of a player character coming back as a bad guy. Because what better way to make your players feel like they had a direct impact in the game than have someone they created be what all of a sudden what they're fighting against. That's a really cool idea to me. So if I'm interpreting that correctly, that you would use him to be a villain of some kind, and the player is not actively playing him, then I say that's great. And you can use, like I would even go as far to say like whatever his kind of like signature move was, or if there's something he really liked to do as a player, then to bring that in, make that a part of it too, like a catchphrase or a specific spell that he was really drawn to, or something like that, something that the player really tailored to fit this character. Use that as the villain's kind of like flavor thing, to make like, oh man, like I created this thing and now it's fighting against me. That's a really cool element, I think.
Especially and especially because if you're gonna bring him back as a villain, you definitely want to do it like when they're like make them more powerful, and there's always a lead up to a villain, like clues and hints and things that they've done. So it's like if you have a player that, I don't know, for example, like let's say for example they raise their undead with a special brand on them, that to show whose property they were or whatever. Maybe months into the future that symbol just starts showing up and they're like, where is this coming from? This guy is dead. And then all of a sudden undead hordes start coming out of nowhere and like raising flags with this big symbol on it. Like that'll freak the players out,
Yeah.
Stuff like that. I actually, one of my players he had an NPC he created named Swarthy. Swarthy was a really like skittish little dude. He was a drug dealer that supplied the player with pesh, which is a type of like snuff. And he had originally, like, the player knew him because Swarthy, they were old friends, and Swarthy had kind of basically fingered the player, so he went to jail and Swarthy went free. And then they saved him from a gang later on during the campaign. He's been disappeared for a little while, and I've been writing it so that he's actually going to have taken up the mantle of like a gang leader, like a really kind of underground crime gang leader that's going to come up in the future, and it's really going to freak the players out because they don't know where he is right now, and they don't actually know that that's something he's capable of doing. So it's going to be like a really big personality shift, especially because, again, this is an NPC that one of the players created. Like, he wrote him, and we built him up together. So hopefully that's a really cool twist. But yeah, I like that. Make him big, make him powerful, make the players like scared of this guy, and that'll be a really cool showdown. All right, and then Greg says, question on behalf of us all, what was in the trapdoor in Uncle Linus' shop?
I saw the question a few minutes ago. I've been evaluating this whole time whether or not I should actually fill you in. I think I'm going to, just because I can't honestly envision a scenario to where you're back at that place and able to find out those answers for yourself. So, what happened? So the golem that you saw in Uncle Linus' shop that one time, he was a construct, obviously, that worked for Linus, and Linus was using a whole series of golems operating in underground corridors and tunnels under the city to relay information back and forth with a whole crypt of dead philosophers and people that kind of like a mausoleum of really important people all throughout time in this city, this capital city of High Rock, where he was from. So he was using these, like a mental link with these golems that were set up in spots all around these catacombs to cast spells on these deceased corpses that would revive them and ask them questions about a whole bunch of different things. So Linus was kind of like the go-to guy for all things historical, all things knowledge, all things intelligence. He was pretty much the self-proclaimed smartest dude in High Rock. And so the shop that he ran was almost like an information repository where people could come to him with questions, and he would always have the answers somehow.
So he was like one of those he's like one of those televangelists with the earpiece in their ear.
Kind of, yeah. And so, and he was getting his information secondhand through this series of golems that he had positioned all throughout under the city, and so that he would cast this spell on the corpse. I don't remember what the name of the spell is,
Speak
but
with
it
dead,
actually
probably.
speak with dead, and so yeah, he would. It was super like below board, like totally not
Oh
approved
yeah,
at all.
yeah.
And so he was always kind of keeping that under wraps. But
I'm assuming they killed him.
no, his town got destroyed in that 35-year jump, and so he's still alive actually. But he has been relocated to a place, and that part of town is destroyed, and there's really no way that they could ever go back and figure that information out. But yes, he was running a corpse-ridden information network, specifically used to benefit himself, and he's a weird dude, but you never actually got to engage with him on a professional level. You only ever knew him as Akio's uncle. So yeah, that whole golem thing, that whole like red herring there was just a little tip off of like, oh, he's doing something weird with golems, but you don't know what. But that was it. He was an information broker, like Greg said, and he somehow had this vast information of knowledge that no one could explain.
I was gonna say he's doing something weird with golems, but not the other thing. He's doing.
Yeah. Something weird. And I thought it was really funny because I never planned for Uncle Linus to be like a necromancer of any kind, but Akio was a necromancer, so I was like, oh, okay, like it's kind of like shared influence thing. So I thought there was this nice parallel there, but
it never came up.
It never developed because the world jumped 35 years and all that got relocated, and the players never really inquired that much about the golem in his shop. So that storyline died when the players jumped into the future.
All right. I think that is probably the last question that we have had in chat, and I want to. We definitely don't have all that much time for any others, but a huge thank you to everyone who has been hanging out with us in chat. You guys are awesome.
I have to say, we have a conch shell mom now. We have the whole conch shell family in chat.
I may have missed the joke on that.
Oh, it's Sherwood, who's a druid in our campaign. He has a conch shell that he used to blow into, and that was like his thing. He would blow it as like a warning shot, or if he was about to charge into battle. He said he wasn't going to be watching the feed, so I don't know if he is or not. And if he is, he's trolling us by making multiple accounts. So well done, Sherwood. If the players had to fight each other in a free-for-all, at this point it would definitely be the Colonel. I think the Colonel, who's a barbarian, would win in a fight, just because I think he's going to negate a bunch of damage that he takes, as well as he has more hit points than anyone else. So, yeah, that's it.
All right.
The whole conch shell family, I love you guys.
Well, once again, thank you everyone for hanging in chat. You guys are awesome. Thank you for all your questions. Obviously, we're here every week taking live questions, so if you have more D&D questions in the future, feel free to stop by. But before we wrap things up, I want to give a huge thanks to my friend Reed for hanging out with me. If you want to go ahead and tell everyone a little bit about what you get up to on the internet, plug what you'd like to plug and where they can find you, most importantly.
Yeah. Obviously, a lot of the people in chat I've already interacted with on Twitter, so that is a huge way of reaching out to us. And me specifically, I run the Twitter account, but the whole show, our Twitter account is @SneakPodcast. You can see it on the little. I'm not going to do this right there. I'm just pointing.
It's down,
right
yeah.
there.
You see it. It's right over here.
So you can hit us up on Twitter @SneakPodcast, but. That's the easiest and best way to get in touch with me. But I'm very excited. This is like literally brand new information. No one else outside of the players on our show and 2 other people know that this is coming. But we are launching an official Sneak Attack website, and we've been without a website for a long time because we wanted to take the time to do it right and make sure we had content that was engaging enough outside of just the show itself. And so we have a website coming at the beginning of 2017. It will be sneakpodcast.com. The site's actually live now, but it doesn't do anything. It's just a placeholder. But sneakpodcast.com, there's going to be tons of really awesome, unique content that you can only find on there, specifically a huge information repository, kind of like a Wikipedia-style layout to where you can search for NPCs, city names, or cities, all this stuff. And in those breakdowns in the description, we'll eventually link you to the episode that they're featured in. So this really awesome kind of interactive tool that'll help players explore NPCs, towns, cities, anything that's been happening in the world. We're really excited about that. We've been working really hard, and Mike Sherwood, our designer, he's been working really hard on that, and we're really, really excited for that to happen. I don't know if the Wikipedia feature is going to be live on day one, but we're already actively working on getting all that content created and built out. So sneakpodcast.com 2017, that's when you can find it. You can listen to episodes, look at fan art, the Wikipedia stuff. There will even be a store to where we're gonna house all of our own merchandise and stuff. Literally, it's going to be your one-stop shop. Within 30 seconds, you're going to know what we're about, and we're super pumped about it. I can see in the comments that you guys are pumped too. So like that really makes me feel great. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely excited to check that out. As always, and again, big thanks to Reed and all of the cast and friends for coming to hang out with us. For those of you guys, we've announced it a couple times, but those of you guys who are just joining us recently or just chilling, thank you for hanging out. This has been Fuzzy Dice, the Dungeon Master Show. I got a quick couple announcements before we get out of here. As always, you're hanging out on the Exploding Dice channel, and if you like this show, I am here every Tuesday with awesome guests, the best of the best in content, guests, and talk show programming from all over the internet with regards to the hobby that is role-playing games. We have some amazing content coming for you in December, and November, December get a little bit rocky because of the holidays, but we've got some great guests that I'm looking forward to. As always, 1K, final stretch to the 1K goal. Big 24-hour stream at the end of it. Once we hit that, I will be announcing all of the guests that I can't announce just yet who are going to be joining and taking part of it. I can tell you some of the best and biggest content creators in the hobby are going to be donating their time and some gifts to give away or DMing shows on it. It's going to be amazing. If you guys want more D&D in your life, consider stopping by here every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern for live D&D. We play Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition Jade Regent campaign right here on this show. It's me and a cast of awesome and funny people. We get really drunk because we have drinking rules in play, so definitely bring your alcohol. It is a fun time because we encourage you to drink when we do. And also, I DM some other shows on Encounter Roleplay, so you can check out their schedule for more of that. Oh, and last but not least, we're going to be on the front page of Twitch in December. Look for that. It's going to be a big announcement. All kinds of stuff is happening, and I'm crazy excited for it. As always, thank you guys for hanging out. Thank you to my friend Reed for joining me. It has been great. I hope you guys had fun. I know I certainly did. And as always, don't let Dice Thulu get his tentacles on you, because he gets very handsy when he does. We'll see you guys next week. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.